When we came back in September, I served on the Financial Services Committee. Paulson comes up to Barney Frank, hands him a 3-page bill, said we're in real trouble in this country. Our financial institutions are about to collapse. And if we don't do something soon and quick, we may see an economic depression even greater than the one that happened in the 20s and early 30s. And so the bill basically said this. We need about $1.3 trillion, and if you don't mind, exempt us from any judicial review. That's pretty brazen, I thought. I mean, literally, that was the bill. We need about $1.3 trillion. We know how to spend it. We know where it needs to go to. And we don't want any judicial oversight. In essence, we don't want to be accused of breaking the law because we know we're going to, Zach. We know we're going to. We've done it enough already. And so we start negotiating this. And I'm looking at this bill that they're about to pass. And we have Paulson who comes before us, and I question him. And then we have Bernanke who comes with him, and I make questions there. Then I have my staff. I said, Google those folks. Tell me who they are. Get on. I don't know what Google is, but they've taught me Google is something you can find out about people. Google those folks. And so they Googled them. And here's what they brought me. Paulson, you know what his first job was? 1972 to mid-1973, he worked as an assistant to the assistant deputy of the Department of Defense, the one who put together the Lockheed bank failure, the bailout. You know what his next job was? From 73 to 74, he worked with Ehrlichman, Watergate. And in 74, when Ehrlichman resigned, what did he do? He had to resign as well. Where did he go? Goldman Sachs. How long did he work with them? He was CEO in 2006 when he became the treasurer, remember? And so I'm looking at Goldman Sachs. I've heard my wife talk about Saks Fifth Avenue. You know, I don't think she's been, because we would have had to sold some of the cattle and probably one of the farms, because I understand it's pretty expensive. But my understanding was gold. You take gold to Saks Fifth Avenue and you buy a nice dress. And so for me, I'm thinking, it's a place in New York. I didn't realize, I'm only kidding, but. So all of a sudden, here's this guy who's been one of the bad actors. He's one of the culprits. This fellow is the one who put together all those, a part of all of those. Hedge funds, investment banking, risky investments for higher returns. And we're going to give him $1.3 trillion for free with no judicial oversight. So we started drawing up a bill. We made it better, but not good enough. And so when it came, the first vote on that bill, I voted against it. It came back the second time, I voted against it again. It came back the third time where the Senate had passed it, I voted against it again. Because I don't believe that you hand people money who take a bath in the morning and are chauffeur-driven to work. And I'll explain the second part of that in just a moment when I get on working with our UAW folks and our auto workers. And so we had 2 United States senators in Tennessee. Both voted for that bill. Both of them did. One of the senators called me and said, are you going to vote for it? And I said, probably not. But I don't know whether that's the best vote or the worst vote. But I can't come to the conclusion in my mind that I should vote for a bill that rewards bankers in New York and on Wall Street and ignore the needs of the small community banks in the rural 4th Congressional District. We don't have Wall Street bankers in my district. We have folks who work at community banks who make loans to folks to buy a used car. And I said used for a reason. That's usually what a lot of folks in my district are able to buy. And so I couldn't vote for that. I thought I was deceiving the folks in my district, and I thought I was deceiving this country. But yet both of our senators did. And then, shortly after that, we realized that the Big Three's in trouble. And the Big Three came, and they talked. And I had even folks on our side of the aisle was really, I thought, being a little bit cruel to not only the United Auto Workers, but also to the Big Three. Sure, they flew there in a jet. As far as I'm concerned, they could have been drugged behind a pickup truck down there, but that's not the case. But they flew in their jets. They did wise up, and they drove back in an automobile that they manufactured in their plants later on. And so I get to looking at things. Well, why should I reward GM and Chrysler and Ford with a bridge loan? not a bailout. This is when the right wing really kicked in. I mean, they really kicked in. UAW workers. And so I thought, Lincoln, you got to be as honest with those UAW workers and with the big three as you were with your analysis of the banks. And so, again, I got John Boughton. I got other folks in my office, and we started Googling again. And here's what I found out. In my congressional district, there are 143 parts suppliers that employ 49,110 people as of early October. Let me rephrase that. That's almost a third of the workforce, 25% of the workforce in my congressional district. Unfortunately, Jerry, they were not UAW workers. Some of those worked for a company that had 1 or 2 employees, maybe a man and his wife. And some worked for companies that had 300, 400, or 500 employees in them. This does not include the old Saturn plant. These 50,000 people are not those who work at the UAW plant in Spring Hill. It was not the Nissan workers in Deckard, Tennessee. It was not Bridgestone in Morrison, Tennessee. It was not Dana Corporation. It's small suppliers who are supplying the parts that go into an automobile. My Chevrolet pickup I'm driving that was put together in Flint, Michigan by Labor Union number 573 or 76, I believe is the number on the door. They're supplying parts for that automobile. The UAW workers put those together. 50,000 workers were at jeopardy in my district if either one of those factories closed, because what's the first thing that happens? Who's a lawyer in the room? We've got one in the bank. First thing that happens in a bankruptcy is accounts payable are charged off. And accounts payable are those just hard-working people, right? Bankers do too. Since we only had one to admit it and the rest of you haven't, we can pick on them a little bit. The first thing charged off in a bankruptcy suit is accounts payable. Every factory that was a part supplier in my congressional district would have closed just like that if that bankruptcy had occurred. We had the same United States senators demagoguing that bill. And who are they talking about? The high-paid UAW workers. I Googled that too. The average pay for a UAW worker in either one of those big three factories is $28 an hour. The average pay for Honda is $24. For Toyota, it's $26.50. Average pay for Hyundai is $21. That's what these hard-working folks who drive themselves to work and take a bath when they come home. Mr. Corker. They drive themselves to work. And when they come back, Mama says, honey, take a bath. Because you've been on that assembly line all day long. But our two senators chose to vote for who? The silk suit, chauffeur-driven, bath taken in the morning, if you want to call it worker. And then they demagogue and criticize those who work in that assembly line that put that automobile together from the parts that are built by people who live in my congressional district. I just felt there was no justice in that. And I had to stand up for it, so I voted for the bill. But even more than that, I went a little bit further. 240,000 people at that time worked for the big three. 240,000. How many of those you think are executives? And how many are UAW workers? Make a guess. Jerry, make a guess. I bet you don't know. I'm sorry. Not picking on you. Zach, 140,000 UAW members of the 240,000 that work for the big three. Where are the other 100,000? They're executives. They also take a bath before they go to work in the morning. And they get more money out of the payroll than the workers who put that automobile together. The UAW worker has to work hard enough to pay for their salary and the executive salary as well, Mr. Corker. So at least talk about them as well. Don't just talk about the hard worker, the one whose job is at jeopardy, and the one who makes less money than the folks you never mentioned. So for me, it didn't take a rocket scientist. There are some who live in the eastern part of my district in Oak Ridge, but it didn't take a rocket scientist. A farm boy could figure that out. And so for me, I think that was the mistake. But fortunately, one of the good things, if you can give credit to the former president, he at least realized that in the TARP funds, there was a way to at least make a bridge loan to GM and to Chrysler to keep them at least floating.